I remember going to bed somewhere between 2 in the morning and 3 in the morning. And then waking up sometime roughly at 7:30 in the morning. Which isn't an ideal amount of sleep, but it's better than nothing. Though it probably explains why I felt kind of tired by the time I walked to the tower building. Which I walked relatively slowly because I know that I'm only supposed to do light exertion, light exercise after donating blood for about a day. There's also supposed to be no heavy lifting. So I think the heaviest lifting I did was when I brought my stuff over. That I packed for the return trip to Brockport campus. Into my dorm room. Immediately after I did that, I went to the Visual Art Experience Studio, during which I essentially spent a little more than an hour transferring basically this design, although this one's outdated because the real design has these ends wider, these parts narrower, more of these lines, including one that's horizontal, one diagonal, and it doesn't have this sort of square, but it's accurate enough to give you a rough idea of what I traced onto a gessoed piece of paper that's also been taped up. This has been in the fridge for several days. But it's still good. Yeah, it turns out that my art professor, she stayed until roughly 4 p.m., by which time I had completed the tracing, the transferring of essentially this onto a harder piece of paper that was gessoed and taped up. I assume the tape is there to provide some kind of edges or border. Essentially some room for a frame. I believe my time in the art room involved roughly the first time I ever used one of those compass machines. That's this sort of circular device with two slots, one for the pointer and the other for the pencil. And you kind of adjust the pointer to determine how large the circle is. And it can be pretty unwieldy. You kind of have to rotate it kind of like this, I would say. And because I wasn't exactly used to using that kind of tool, I remember using, back in primary school, that sort of era, using a circle tracer in order to draw a perfect circle. Here's where I'm currently at in terms of the toolboxes. I'm about halfway there. Already almost out of supplies. I used up quite a bit of population to start the first of the latest main hall upgrades. And I'm just working right now to essentially get it back. After my time working outside of class, since I know working outside of class if the professor knows I do that, it'll help my visual art experience grade. I actually asked how I was doing in class, And she said that I probably, if I recall correctly, that I probably have an A minus, but that I have a perfect attendance. Again, I work outside of class, as was proven today. At least in my mind, there may have been other times as she saw me working outside of class. They're just a bit fuzzier because they took place earlier this semester. Hard to remember the exact day. Anyway, by 4:15 p.m. roughly, I had finished the tracing, the transferring, into the gessoed paper. I did make some mistakes. Some mistakes regarding layering, so that these lines went through this triangle. I accidentally flipped this triangle. Then I made a layering mistake on here. But I was able to erase the pencil lines for those mistakes, but gesso paper generally doesn't like stuff being erased much, in that at best you'll generally only be able to erase, you'll only be able to lighten the granite rather than completely remove it. And the faded lines, to try to further fade those unnecessary lines, additional gesso was applied over them. I'm pretty sure by the time I have all the rooms for the mountain halls, this main hall upgrade will be complete. It started with roughly 36.5 hours. Also, I love the appearance of this max level fairy portal site. We've got a pretty good amount of Amosa, I would say. but I don't have much of night essence because that stuff is harder to come by. I've got a ton of scrolls, but basically no crystal. Apparently no one's interested in this trade offer, even though it's a fair offer. After I ended up taking a pretty long way from the tower to Eagle Hall because I wanted to check I wanted to try to go into the Academic Success Center today to work on essentially getting ready for this Democrat Committee internship that I'll be applying to. It turned out that the entrance to that building was not blocked by the fencing that designated the construction area. Although I did see it. I also saw some Black Lives Matter posters that were hung from the outside part of the windows facing the outside. They then stopped to take a picture of. Since it's important to spread the message of Black Lives Matter. Which is to acknowledge that Africans, because I don't think the term African Americans is inclusive, are just as important to society as other races, including those that are considered white, and thus historically have been privileged due to institutional racism and the lingering effects of explicitly racist legislation. At least that's my understanding of the issue. Yeah, that wouldn't really be very valuable. Anyway, when I got back to my dorm room at around 4:30 p.m., I think within half an hour I fell asleep on this mattress. Woke up at about at 7:59 p.m. and then went back to sleep. Woke up at roughly 10:30 p.m. And so I had to book it. Well, in that case, it just means that I had pretty much immediately got ready and walked to the Harrison building to go to the Nest and get all this. So that's generally the kind of emergency you want to go to use up your dining points for. You accidentally oversleep and miss out on getting dinner from a dining hall, and thus using up one of your meals. I've got $142.72 left in, dining points. I took this off this middle finger at around 8, if I recall. And I took this stuff off at around 10:35 p.m., I would say. And again, this was at 8 p.m. In the past, I've had a tendency to wear the Band-Aid and wrapping for my arm for much longer than I needed to. And while this is technically no different, it wasn't for essentially a whole day this time around. According to my recent memory. I'm trying to eat a bit healthier since the person who did my pre-screening actually had a bit of a talk with me regarding how one of the main causes of high blood pressure is obesity. Presumably because your body has to pump your blood through the constricting fat, or maybe the extra weight puts extra pressure on the blood vessels. That's how I imagine it would be, though I'm not entirely sure. I'm hoping to at some point maybe lose some weight so that I can lower my blood pressure and to ensure that and protect my eligibility for doing whole blood donations, considering how in about a week I'm going to be giving platelets for the first time, so that'll be a new experience. Oddly enough, one of the first things I did today was find out that I wasn't just kicked out of the Slammers. The Slammers were dissolved entirely. I found I was no longer in a clan in Iron Rage, and even when I tried to search them up, they were no longer there. Perhaps they fused with some other clan. Either way, I know I'm going to be out of a clan for at least 5 days. Though it is pretty incredible that I've gotten this opportunity. This sort of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to, potentially pick a better clan than the Slammers, potentially. Oh, though that might be hard to achieve. No matter, throughout it all, from the beginning to the end, they were always able to maintain a spot within the top 10. That's giving me plenty of bonuses at the end of each season. And I may be lucky if I find another clan like that. But regardless, it'll be fine. Since at the moment I have quite the preference for this game over Iron Rage. Though I do still ensure that I keep returning and keep my account active. I in particular joined the Slammers because it was headed by Tan2, who I knew through comments and forum posts regarding the Iron Rage game back when it was still on Congregate. I think technically it's still on Congregate, but there's a clear preference to use the launcher nowadays. One last thing I should probably check how we are in the Fellowship Adventures. It's hard to advance because the place we're closest to, it requires 6 more Blacksmith Guild badges. And getting one of those requires producing 5 toolboxes. I'm currently making work on getting 2 Blacksmith Guild badges, at least. There's also the potential to get some Dwarven Brewery badges, but it's pretty intensive to repeatedly produce beverages, since actually that production period is only 5 minutes at most. And that's so intensive that you pretty much have to... It doesn't give you much time to go and do something else while you wait.